failing is the best way to learn, in my opinion.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us and welcome to the Founders in LA podcast. I'm your host Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight through a product lens on some of the exceptional founders we have as part of the LA community in an unedited, one-take organic conversation. With us today in the studio is Jason Vego. Thanks for coming down, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this one and learn more about Bevz. This is going to be a good one. But first, a word from our sponsors. Founders in LA is brought to you by Nearshore. Nearshore is a trailblazer in nearshore outsourcing and staff augmentation. With over 15 years of experience offering exceptional Latin American software, data, product, and design talent for U.S. projects, Nearshore has revolutionized the way companies scale their teams. They stand apart with 50% female leadership, are trusted by companies large and small, and have been helping U.S. customers grow since before nearshoring was cool. Discover how Nearshore can power your tech goals and help you stay lean while scaling fast. Learn more at www.nearshore.com. That's www.nearsure.com. We're also brought to you by Unita. Unita Club is a co-working space that sets itself apart. With locations in El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and Hermosa, Unita is where creativity flourishes. Unlike traditional offices, they provide an inspiring environment where ideas can thrive and businesses can grow. With Unita, there's no hidden fees, flexible terms, options for dedicated offices, and unlimited access to conference rooms, a photo studio, this podcast studio, plus standard 3D printers and 24/7 access at any of their locations. They're local champions who support neighborhood businesses, open their event spaces to nonprofits, and celebrate art, music, and culture. Join Unita Club and experience co-working like never before. Learn more at www.unita.club. That's www.unita.club. Our guest today is Jason Vego. He's the CEO and co-founder of Bevz. And Jason, could you just give us a 30-second rundown of Bevz?
Yeah, so Bevz is a SaaS platform for liquor stores and convenience stores. What we're doing is we're helping these stores automate and integrate the way they buy and sell inventory. And so what does that mean? We help a mom and pop or a chain convenience store integrate with the way they buy inventory from their distributors, the way they sell it in store through a point of sale system, and then the way they sell it online through e-commerce and delivery apps.
Yeah, because when I think of, liquor stores for some folks who may not be in LA or in California, I for instance grew up in Pennsylvania where the liquor stores are very different. They're like state run, but out here, it's like almost a free for all where there's different independently owned liquor stores. I know some of my previous apartments have been near Frank's Liquor down in Westwood, I guess the Hermosa Beach liquor store in Hermosa Beach. So yeah, different stores, and each one is a mom and pop shop. So what Bevz is doing is you're providing a platform to help them better optimize and maximize the shelf space, or what aspects of it?
Yeah, so first off, being in California, you see these independently operated stores all the time. It's not the same across the nation. There are some state-run stores, but the numbers are still pretty incredible across the nation. It's 150,000 convenience stores in the US. 71% of those are independently operated or small chains. So the majority are actually independent and small chains, even though a lot of us seem to think we see the 7-Elevens, the Circle K's around. But to answer your question, what exactly is it doing? It is a typical convenience store has about 5,000 to 10,000 unique SKUs. It's just a ton of different items, not a lot of those items, but a ton of unique items. And so what we're helping them do is track and manage what they have in stock, and then helping them easily sell it online. That's really sort of what we call our wedge, is helping the mom and pop store do e-commerce, really.
I think that's fascinating, because when you think of a convenience store, the whole point of it to be a convenience store is it has a wide breadth of products, but not many of them. But yeah, as a proprietor of that, I all of a sudden have to be kind of on top of 5,000 different SKUs, understanding, hey, these are the brands that are moving, these are the types of things that are moving. Historically, what were folks doing? Is it just kind of eyeballing it? Just look at the shelf, I keep restocking SpaghettiOs on aisle 5. You just got to keep going with that, or yeah. How did they do that?
So it's a combo. So part of it is, eyeballing. It depends how active a store owner is. So we have some store owners that are there every day. If you're experiencing what the customers are asking, you're watching it, you could be more active. What really supplements that is what the brands and the distributors do. So like an Anheuser-Busch, for example, literally goes to these stores every single week. They count the inventory for them, and then they tell them what they're running low on. And that combo is what allows a convenience store to operate, because you think even any independent business, they don't have a technology team, they don't have an operations team, they might have one or two people working in the store at any given time. So it's an impossible task on its own. And so a combo of eyeballing, getting to know your customers, and expecting the distributors to sort of do a lot of the work for you.
That's interesting. So would Bevz be kind of a stimulus for some of the lesser known brands? So in that world where I'm a proprietor, I'm relying on the distributors and anyone who has the staff and budget to kind of tell me how I'm doing, I'll probably keep going back to them because they have an easy button for me, and people love easy buttons. But from Bevz, you could allow these other players who may not have huge distribution or his distributors to actually have a part in the game, because they could just use the analytics, say, oh, we keep running out of that. They never come here and count it, but like we keep running low. We don't run out, so I never actually look to do the order right away. But like that's something to start keeping an eye on.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity and problem, right? And so we've seen this time and time again. Even the early days of Bevz, we actually did some brand consulting, because we would get all these smaller to medium brands who do not have the budgets or the distributor power to like do what I just said, which is go to every single store, count items. And so how do they get into the stores? They literally go themselves, or they partner with someone like Bevz who has the connection to hundreds and then eventually thousands of retailers, right? So that's one thing that we've already done. We've seen the value there. But yeah, it's impossible to compete when you're a smaller brand without a distributor, when you have the big brands doing what we just said, right? And so we think there's this huge opportunity, not just the data, right? So we could tell a small brand, hey, you're doing better, you're doing worse. It can also be automation, right? So right now, Anheuser-Busch goes and counts the items, right? Well, if we're counting it for everyone, not just the store, but the brands, the distributors, you're a small brand, you don't even have to go visit. If it hits 20% levels, it auto reorders or things like that. So just an insane amount of opportunity. One of the most exciting things for me is that, which is smaller brands, unique brands, international brands, healthy brands that have not historically gotten into the convenience store in an effective way. We are hoping we can facilitate that.
So can we double click a little bit more into the product of Bevz? So without giving away too much, what does it look like when I'm a proprietor? Is it that I just have to keep going around my daily business and just kind of keep scanning the items, and you've developed a platform that kind of intakes, it kind of connects to their scanning platform, and so it can just automatically do it in the background?
Yeah, so that's the intention. We're still quite early. And so today, sort of what it looks like is we have an inventory management platform. We have preloaded data, normalized data across name, description, photo, and UPC code for anything that a convenience store would sell. We have almost 160,000 items in there. Obviously, a single store, as I said, is not going to be selling 160,000, but it varies so much. And so we preload the database with that. They are then choosing what they want to sell online today with Bevz. That's through apps like DoorDash, Uber, Grubhub, Postmates. That's how they use it today. What do they choose to sell online in an easier, more efficient, kind of automated way? We are now going into what I'm calling kind of the phase 2, which is we're integrating with the point of sale systems. We have some cool technology where we can tap into the barcode scanner too. The idea being, if we know what's leaving in store and online, we can help them facilitate the way they buy and restock their inventory. But the short answer is we are not there just yet. They are not tracking all of the inventory in store. Today, it's just a tool to help them manage their e-commerce sort of stores.
Yeah, and so like what stage is Bevz at right now?
Yep, so we are considered seed stage. We closed a seed round last year. I can't share exact numbers, but over 1,000 convenience stores across 16 states. We're growing quite fast, about 400% annually, trying to maintain that growth. We may not necessarily keep that forever, but we're really adding and keeping a lot of convenience stores across the nation, and looking toward a Series A in the next year or two. And The name of the game is build cool technology that helps these stores run their business, especially revolving around what they buy and sell. That is the core, right, of a convenience store. And then add as many stores as we can.
Congrats on the funding last year. I mean, it was a challenging year all around, and it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy to come by. So that's no small feat in order to even get the seed funding last year.
Thank you.
Wow, how did you find yourself into this seat? Like, do you always think you're going to be creating your own business? Did you always have an affinity for convenience stores? Like,
yeah,
was like the mystery of the novel, like it was always there all along, or is this something that kind of came by happenstance?
Yeah, a little bit. It was there all along. So I'll try and not give too long of a story, but always entrepreneurial as a kid, right? I don't want to go into the lemonade stands and things like that, but I was doing lemonade stands.
But there were lemonade stands?
There were absolutely lemonade stands and selling like things from magazines for my school. So I was always doing that. My first stab at entrepreneurship was I co-founded a nonprofit in college that raised money for Children's Miracle Network. That was my real first stab at like bank accounts, registering a 501c3, like building a team, engaging a team, handling real cash. We ended up being like a 30-person team, and I look back going like, that was a pretty big team to manage as a college student. But to sort of more answer your question, my real kind of first shot at entrepreneurship in the tech realm was I built a software platform for dog groomers. So I was a dog owner, not a dog groomer, and I built a technology that helped dog groomers manage and grow their business. Basically, Bevz for dog groomers. And that failed for a lot of different reasons. One of those was my lack of skill set. So I felt I was missing some of the product, operations, and finance skill sets. So I ended up applying to UCLA, getting my MBA at UCLA Anderson. But the second miss was our lack of understanding of the customer. I was a customer to the dog groomer, but I am not a dog groomer. And so there was a huge gap in understanding the life, the work, the day-to-day of running a dog grooming business. If I went back in time, I either wish I partnered with a dog groomer or I got a job at a dog grooming studio and learned it. So fast forward toward the end of the life of my dog grooming company, a friend of mine, old-time family friend, I was friends with his son for many years. I've known him since I've been 6 years old. His name's Victor, has owned and operated liquor stores and convenience stores in Southern California for now 39 years. And he calls me saying, I want to build technology for convenience stores and liquor stores. We've been overlooked entirely. The restaurant technology doesn't work. The grocery technology doesn't work. Even the delivery app, someone like him who's way savvier than your average retailer struggles to onboard and use these apps. I want to build something. And it checked all these boxes of, one, I was getting the operations, finance, and product skill set that I didn't have. I was already enrolled at UCLA. And the gap in understanding the customer, you can't beat 39 years of experience running stores. What's funny to your question around, was it always around me? So he was actually my basketball coach growing up. Literally, we won a LA City championship somehow. If you can see my height, I'm 5'7". I'm not sure how we won an LA City championship.
In Los Angeles, no less, where you have just like giants and like legitimate professional athletes growing up.
Yes, I was watching the Lakers the other day, and my dad's like, you used to play against him. And I'm like, no way. And so there are a few NBA players that I played against, and they destroyed me for sure. But we won a championship, and more point of the story around Bevz was when we'd play in the games, we'd go to his liquor stores after, right? Obviously, when I was 9, I was not buying liquor, but I was getting chips and Gatorades and snacks. And at the birthday parties, the family events, all convenience store owners. So I've been weirdly around convenience store owners and liquor store owners since I've been a 6-year-old. And so it's always been there. But no, my passion was never convenience stores. My passion was building software for overlooked markets, legacy industries, small businesses. I love building technology, like it's called vertical software, that's really custom built for a very specific audience. And Victor is really where all the credit goes to in picking this business and this customer.
Yeah, there's a couple of fascinating points to click into. One is, and we touch upon it here pretty regularly, but like this founder market fit is so key. Tell us about, and the other piece to it is like, oftentimes when you have successful startup founders, it's not their first rodeo. Like they've either had another iteration of the same product, or they have a whole nother business. Can you talk a little bit more to when you realized, how did you realize you had those two skill set gaps? It's awesome that you went out and were able to eliminate both of them or address both of them before building the next company. But at what point did you recognize, like, sit back and say, you know, post-mortem, you know, these are the things I really wish I had?
Yeah.
Can you talk to those?
Yeah. So the tail end of the dog grooming business is when I started to really learn what I didn't have. I think I'm still feel like there's a lot I don't have. And so this is a lifelong journey of figuring out the skill sets. Even today, I was talking to someone where I'm like, I feel behind in the AI revolution where I'm not using any of these tools, and it makes me anxious that I'm not learning them, because I do think the future is going to be not AI taking people's jobs, but people who know how to use AI taking people's jobs. But besides the point, right, it was failing is the best way to learn, in my opinion. So we launched a product, me and my co-founder at the time, for the dog grooming platform. I have a communications background, so I thought I was communicating sort of product features and build in a effective way, and I was absolutely not. So the product came out nothing like what we thought. Another mistake, a big mistake we made, was we had this huge wait list of dog owners that really wanted to use the platform to engage with their dog groomer, and we did not talk to nearly enough dog groomers that really wanted it. This is pre-pandemic. I do actually think now this business could work, so maybe someone out there should build this and I will hand over all my notes. But it was failing, not getting customers engaged in the right ways, thinking I knew product, thinking I knew operations, trying to set up the bank accounts, trying to learn about fundraising. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I think it was pretty visceral just living it. The second thing was I started to build some advisors. I didn't have a lot. I'd say I got most of my current advisors through UCLA and then through accelerator programs like Techstars. But still before that, I had a couple people in my network that were helpful, and they were pretty clear on what they thought my gaps were. And there was a theme, which was product, operations, and finance. And so that's really how I lived it. And maybe for later in the conversation, we did have a second iteration of Bevz. I consider the current Bevz like a second company almost. Like, we did a huge pivot. And so even though I was getting the MBA, I failed once in a startup and we went to Bevz, I'd say we made a ton of mistakes again with a very different company, very different product, very different customer. And then I realized again where my gaps were and then try to fill them. But
let's just dive into it. So how did you, what was that previous one? And then at what point did you decide to make the pivot?
Yep. So we launched in January 2020. It was a alcohol delivery app. So think DoorDash for liquor stores. We built our own marketplace. So you as a customer would literally use the Bevz consumer app and order from the liquor store. And we were already putting the technology in the liquor store. So that part of the business did stay, right?
At the time, in early 2020, there's like Drizzly. There was only a couple of them out in the market at that moment.
Early days, right? So the key player, Drizzly, was the most well-known, barely in California. And the stores we knew that had worked with them weren't the happiest. This is pre-pandemic again. There were a couple players, Saucy, Mini Bar, things like that. But it was still ripe. And why did we start this company? Not just why did we start technology for liquor stores, why did we start that exact product? So we talked to all these stores, all these owners that we knew through my co-founder, Victor, and they all said, we want one easy way to sell online. We don't like what's out there. We want to sell online. So what did we do? We built a delivery app. Pandemic hits, goes quite well, right? So we're doing almost 1,000 delivery orders a month in the early days of Bevz, and we're like, we're onto something. We built. How were we going to win? By building a better solution for the retailer. And if the retailer really loves using our platform, then their customers will use it more often and we'll get enough market share, and who knows what will happen. Then pandemic hits and that changes everything. And so what started to happen was pretty funny, is we'd get calls all the time for help using other delivery apps. So a store would say, hey, how do I move this from this thing? And we're like, are you using Bevz right now? And they're like, no, Postmates. And we're like, okay, help them anyways, right? Because we always felt the consumer was not our customer, the retailer was our customer. And so that was part one. Pandemic hits, industry changes. They actually did not need another delivery app. They needed a better, more effective way to use wherever their customers were. Whatever delivery app their customers wanted to use, they wanted to be effective on there. So that was reason one for the pivot. Reason two was what the brands were wanting. So as I mentioned, we were experiencing all these things with Anheuser-Busch that were literally going in and counting. So at the time we had a mobile app, right? We were doing advertising in the mobile app. Anheuser-Busch, small brands too, would pay a little bit of money, advertise in the mobile app. That was to consumers like us buying. They came back and were like, if Bevz didn't exist, it wouldn't really matter for us because we'll just advertise anywhere else. Another app, a billboard, the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter. They're like, can you tell us what's happening in the store? And we're like, no, not yet. But we think we can get there. Is they want to know what's leaving the store, because that's the problem we talked about earlier, which is they know what they sell. They have no idea what sells. And so they're going, this is a real quote that I got, which is not something I can reuse, but is I was told, if you can tell us what's happening in all these convenience and liquor stores across the nation, we will pay anything. And I'm like, okay, $1 trillion? No, probably not. But like there was a tangible problem. So this combo of what the stores needed was better access to delivery apps. The second thing was what the brands wanted. And the third was what the core problem was. The core problem was not e-commerce, which is what we thought at the beginning. The core problem was too much inventory with too many SKUs, too few of each SKU, and a store needed a better way to manage and track their inventory. And if we could do that, we change the way the store operates. We do help with the e-commerce, right? Way easier to sell online if you actually know what you have in stock. And then third, you change the way the industry operates, which is we do see a future where, crazy idea, Anheuser-Busch does not have to walk into a convenience store, put a snow jacket on, walk into the walk-in fridge, count the items one by one, and then count it that way. Like we do see a future where this is all tracked and managed. So that's really the pivot story. And the pivot to your question around timing was basically took all of 2020 to figure out that we had the wrong business. And then went into 2021, spent the whole year pretty much pivoting to the new business, and then went back into market in 2022 as a B2B software platform instead of a marketplace.
Did part of the change come from the convenience store owners providing the wrong answer for what they wanted? They said, we want to be able to sell online.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'll build you a delivery app. And then it turned out that's not what they actually wanted.
Yeah. I mean, surveying 101, we learned a lot of this in business school. A lot of it's also common sense, but I didn't have that common sense apparently at the time. But it was, no, they said they wanted something and it wasn't what they wanted. And the only way to really know what they wanted was to give them something, let them experience it, and then use it. The other question is, we'll never know the answer to this. Did the pandemic expedite a transformation, or did it completely change the way things are done? We don't know either way. I think we're in the right position now, but it did. The pandemic obviously did affect it because stores wanted to be online before the pandemic. Pandemic happens, everything's a mess because the distributors weren't all coming in and counting their inventory. They were struggling to sell across all these e-commerce. Maybe they could have managed it a little bit better, but the combo of pandemic and saying something they wanted, which they realized, like, I don't think they weren't lying to us, I don't think, but like not exactly knowing what they wanted until they experienced it. And that's, I think, product 101, right? But something I didn't really know until I lived it. Yeah,
and coming, I think a lot of our listeners are early stage founders as well. And I think a good lesson would be, yes, you can do all the interviews you want, but to your point, it's not until you get something in front of them that they'll actually identify what the true need is, rather than what they think they want. I've seen this, come up time and time again. Like, people are challenged with a blank space. If you ask them a broad question, they'll have a sense of what they want. But if you show them something, it's so much easier to critique something that's in front of you than it is to like come up with a new idea. So would you say that your ability to, the fact that you guys created an app, the fact you provided them with a basis from which to critique, do you think maybe that also kind of stimulated this evolution of their thinking or of your understanding of them?
Yeah, I think it was a combo, right? So it was one, them getting to physically use something, watch them use it, also looking at the data and in our backend system, like what are they actually doing, right? That was part one. Second was just seeing generally the way they operate their business outside of our product, right? And then having the conversations after, right? So it was this combo of like, yes, give them a thing and let them use it, but also get to know them after they're using it and just how they operate in general. It's a tricky thing with product, right? Because what we made a mistake was we spent too much money in that first version, but if we didn't spend enough money, I don't know if the product would have been effective enough to sell to them, right? This is a convenience store owner who isn't used to using technology. We couldn't give them a mediocre sort of like MVP either. So what's that right balance? It's funny. So at UCLA in the MBA program, in the entrepreneurship program, they have you do 100 interviews before you launch a product. I think that's maybe a little excessive, but it's what is that balance of, you got to do some interviews. I did not enough in the dog grooming platform. I did too many at UCLA. I think we did the right amount at Bevz. We talked to enough people to know what we were doing, spent a little too much on that MVP, but learned really fast. And then you pivot and you adapt with basically what you have. But it's a challenging balance. And I hate putting what I would call like a mediocre product in market, but product 101, you got to get an MVP out. Don't spend all your money and your time. Let them use it and then see what happens. It's the only way.
What would you say that like if you could put like a ballpark number on those, like in your experience, not going to be for everyone, but like in your experience, what would you say is too few interviews? What was probably overkill, and what's kind of the Goldilocks in between that you liked at the second iteration of Bevz?
Yeah, so I think it's also who are you interviewing? So 100 total is probably too many, but instead of giving you like a full number to interview, I think it's who are you interviewing? For us, one, I do think we need to do more because we're selling to independently operated small businesses. So every individual liquor store and convenience store is a little bit different, right? I think also, each state is very different. So for Bevz, I actually think we needed to do more. If you're more of an enterprise platform, I don't think you need to talk to hundreds of enterprises. So I think that could be a smaller number. So I do think it depends on your customer and your market. The second is I do think you should interview more industry people. We did that at UCLA. I did none of that in the dog grooming platform, very little in the convenience store space. Victor is an expert, but you can't just rely on one person. So I wish I talked to, at the time, Anheuser-Busch and some of these smaller brands, distributors, the spectrum. So I think my short answer would be picking your segments you need to interview, and it's really 10 to 15 of sort of each. I'd say like for brands, you probably could do less, 5 to 10. For us, like we should still do 30 to 40 convenience stores and spread them. If I could have done some in LA, some in Northern California, some on the East Coast, I think we would have had a really interesting spectrum. I will never know till this day if I did a little bit better at interviewing, if we would have launched something different. I think it would have been pretty similar, right? We were getting pretty accurate feedback that was help me sell online. And so, but for the dog grooming platform, it would have been very different the way we approached it if I knew what I knew now. But that's the name of the game, right?
Oh man, in my experience with products too, like you can get 80% of the way there in a couple in like maybe 5 interviews. You get like a large bulk of it. When you hit that number, 100. Oftentimes there's patterns that come, but you get to 100, like it's verifying your hypotheses. But if you're down and dirty, you can get a lot of intel from not that many people. And if they're very drastic, then you're like, okay, there's no pattern I can identify, then definitely expand the number. But
it makes me think of even like interviewing for talent, right? It was, I remember Google did a study where at one point they were doing like a dozen interviews for really like specific roles. And then they did the research and it was like after the 4th, like you got basically no returns on knowing whether the candidate was going to be better or worse. In fact, sometimes it went in the wrong direction and you're thinking, wow, we're losing good candidates because we're doing too many interviews. We're wasting a lot of people's time at Google. And so kind of similar to that, I don't know the magic number. I lean more interviews, but that's because I'm probably less risky about it. But yeah, I'm sure there's a diminishing returns at some point, and it may be even in the wrong direction where you start just interviewing just to interview. So tricky stuff, but
yeah. So for the second iteration of Bevz, I guess it'll be the second iteration of Bevz. So like, how did you find your customers, and is that kind of like a tricky one because they actually started in the first iteration of Bevz?
Yeah, so in our case, the pivot was a very different business, but the customer was still the same. And so in the early days, how did we get customers? We literally walked around LA and we went into convenience and liquor stores. Not counting Victor and his cousins, those were our very, very first customers, right? So his family members, but we literally walked in the door. So then the pivot actually was really hard because we sold them on this extra delivery app to make extra money in addition to what you already have. So to come back to them and say, hey, new plan, we're going to put all the delivery apps on one, manage your inventory. Some stores were really bought in, like, wow, that was a big pain point for me. And some were like, I don't need that. I just want other delivery apps to make more money. You sold me on new delivery app, new revenue stream, right? And so it was actually hard to convert a lot of our legacy customers. Also, we learned the hard way, which was we were overconfident about how fast we would grow, how fast we would raise money, how fast the product would advance. So we were telling stores what was coming, because you have to in these early days of setting sort of the vision, because you don't have the full product yet. And we just didn't get there fast enough. So we lost a little bit of trust in our stores there. But kind of answering your question into that phase two, outside of our legacy convenience stores that we started to move to the new platform, we took the playbook very similarly. So we physically walked into convenience and liquor stores. We also learned kind of a phone sales motion. So it's a combo of inside and outside sales. We went back and forth. In the early days, if you asked me, it was outside sales, like physically going into stores, was going to be way too much money. We would never figure it out. It was just a means to get to enough traction, to raise money, to build an inside sales motion, right? It'd be phone sales, right? But as we transitioned, we actually found that the unit economics around field sales was quite good, because a salesperson on our team could get 20 or more new liquor or convenience stores by being in the field. So we now have a combo method, which is we do inside sales over the phone, we do in-person visits, and depending on the salesperson, the location, the sort of budgets, we will do a combined inside outside. But even today, we physically walk into stores and we get them to buy on the spot, and we show them the product like we talked about earlier. It's really meaningful when you could show them a tablet with the Bevz platform on it. They could feel it, they could see it. It makes a difference in the sales process too.
Did it start with you and Victor? So Victor saying, yes, I've run a convenience store for 39 years.
Oh yeah. Mainly Victor.
Does Victor still do does he still do the sales calls?
Not anymore. We finally freed him from the convenience liquor store calls. We will utilize him, which is he speaks Spanish and Arabic is a commonly spoken language for a lot of our liquor and convenience stores. So we will still utilize him if there's an owner. All the owners speak English to some extent, but sometimes it is helpful. And we do hope to get to a point where we have the kind of most commonly spoken languages of our customers in-house. So Victor still does a little bit of sales, definitely a little bit of customer success, but no, day to day, we do not force him to go in the field and knock on doors, but he did it for years. I did a little bit, but we really figured out where our skill sets were more effective, and I am much more effective at eventually the finance, the operations, the product, and he was more effective at the go-to-market stuff. And so we were a good team. We recruited a CTO, a new CTO when we pivoted the company. And so we had this nice trifecta. We built this founding team, and sort of I got out of a lot of the convenience store sales. It seemed I was adding a lot more value. Finance, operations, working with some of the brand partnerships was more my skills. And so that's what we did.
I love it. And I think part of it speaks to who your customers are, because it's a mom and pop convenience store, you actually have a captive audience of the owner who's possibly behind the register, potentially a store that's empty in the middle of the day. And so you're a warm body to talk to. So yeah. I think that, and then with Victor's expertise, and I imagine just 39 years of being in a convenience store, he's been doing sales for 39 years.
Yeah.
I'd love to double click real quick into, you mentioned getting the brands to pay for the advertising within the app. So as an early stage, startup, as a seed stage startup, how did you get anyone to listen to you to get those early sales inside your app?
Yeah, it was tricky. So we used relationships where we could. So we were able to get to a lot of brands because they would, through a rep that would go to Victor's stores over the years. So that is not the person that's going to pay for advertising, but it was still a wedge. So anytime we can find a wedge, you use the wedge, right? So we'd go to the local LA rep selling to these liquor and convenience stores. We'd use Victor's relationship. We'd say, hey, who's like on the marketing department, or someone we can talk to? We have this cool app. We definitely acted bigger than we were at the time, right? We never lied, but we didn't say we're a tiny startup with 3 people. And so we would get to these marketing teams that way. That's one. Second was I did so much cold outreach across the board for fundraising, for brand partnerships. Like I would just go on LinkedIn. I would find emails. I would guess emails, whatever we could do. So it was a lot of hustle. You get to one person, just like any sales process or just like fundraising, like we honed in our pitch, we built one pagers, we built decks, we finally get one person to pay us, right? There was this one tequila brand who was the first group to pay us. I gave them a big discount, but it was an exciting moment where like we got a brand to pay us several $1,000s a month to put their ads in the app. And how did I navigate the conversation again without lying, but without going, hey, we have like 100 users. Like there's not really anyone using this app. We just launched. And so we would avoid that and use things like clicks and stores and whatever. And so I tried to navigate these conversations, but that's how we did it. We sort of use our relationships, a lot of hustle, and just like in anything, you get the first one, the second one's a little easier, the third's a little easier. At some point we had, like not at one time, but like 15 brands we'd work with. It's a lot easier to get them when you're like, oh yeah, we've worked with Anheuser-Busch, we've worked with Pernod Ricard, we've worked with Gallo, and some small brands. And so the reputation built as we had some success. But that's how we did it. I'll add one thing that's kind of interesting was we were a consumer app. It was actually easier to sell that because they were used to it. They advertise everywhere to consumers, right? And even though we weren't adding the value later, we realized it wasn't like a foreign concept. But when we were pivoting the company, we were like, we got to get away from this. We're not even going to have a consumer app at some point. We cannot keep charging for advertising. And so we flipped it to a B2B advertising. So we have a messaging system in the platform. We started going to brands to go, if you want to advertise to consumers, go to Drizzly, go to websites, do whatever you want. If you want to get your product in the store or your new product, work with us because we have hundreds of convenience stores in our network. We can message them. We can send them emails. We can send them text messages. They listen to us to some extent. And we only choose to work with brands that we thought would do well in the store. So like we wouldn't just do any random brand. And so we pivoted those to B2B advertising. A little tricky because there's no like team or budget that really manages that. Because like sales goes and sells, marketing is usually for consumers. So we were trying to find these people at these companies to go, would you pay for B2B advertising or promotion or consulting or anything? Because we were still building up the new software platform. We had no SaaS revenue yet. We needed to make some money. And so that's kind of the journey of advertising.
That's amazing. And of the skill sets you realized you needed, sales wasn't on that list. It sounds like that was something that you had built from the days of lemonade stands.
Yeah, which is funny because, that's a great point that no one's ever called out before, but so obvious almost that sales is maybe arguably the most important skill set in the job. And I think I had some of it innate. Victor absolutely already had some of it, but I didn't even notice because I didn't get that far in the other companies. I didn't get to the point of having to sell really to customers, and I definitely didn't get far enough to really pitch enough investors, which I later realized is also just entirely a sales process. And so I needed to build that skill set a lot. UCLA had one class in sales, and the rest was just practice, accelerators, pitching. But yeah, I'd say sales is arguably maybe one of the most important skill sets, and I didn't fully have it, and I didn't even notice I didn't have it until I lived it.
And then, fortunately, you had Victor on your side.
We got it.
Secret weapon, Victor. Well, thank you so much. And just grounding us back in Los Angeles, love to ask, what's your most LA moment, Jason?
Yeah, so a lot of LA moments. So grew up in LA, went to UCLA, big Laker fan. So I'm pretty LA, I like to believe.
You played against some of them?
I played against some LA Lakers, which is embarrassing. I won't say by how much we lost some of those games, but my most LA moment I feel is actually pretty recently. So we flew out our US team, and actually a couple team members, one in Canada and a couple in the Philippines, flew them out to LA for an in-person team meeting after we closed the round. And we had really great traction. We wanted to bring everyone together because we're a remote team. And so we had about, couple dozen people out here, some from LA, most of them not. And so we wanted to give them a very LA experience. And so we did a few things all sort of back to back. So one was we went to the marina, we rented like a boat out and did the snacks and the drinks and the water. And it was right around the sunset. It was a pouring rain earlier, and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be the worst day. And then the rain stopped. Yeah, I'm like, they're like, this is the worst. And so the rain disappeared, thankfully. Otherwise, that would have been not an LA day. But we did the boat tour. That was awesome. Then we come back, we go get tacos at Street Tacos in LA. Found a really cool spot. Was one of the most inexpensive things we did the entire time, and arguably one of the best. And then we went to Brennan's, who has turtle races. I have heard about these turtle races. I thought it was fake. I thought they were fake turtles or something. They have real life turtles that just like, it's a small circle. They just sort of walk basically, but they race. And so we all like bet on the turtles, and we brought this whole team out. People, some never been to LA, never been to California. Our Philippines team never been to America before. And so we are all sitting there cheering on turtles at Brennan's. And so that combo, like that was one of the most LA days maybe I've ever had, because I tried to custom build an LA day for this team. And so there you go.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And Brennan's, I've also never been to the turtle races. Brennan's, I believe Santa Monica, it's like on the Santa Monica Venice border. Famous for their turtle races.
It's
Sounds like
crazy.
they are still legit.
They are. They're real turtles. They're not fake turtles, and you can watch them. And there were just hundreds of people cheering on these turtles. I don't have the best eyes for seeing far away. I have to wear glasses, and I'm thinking my turtle's winning, and it's not winning. And so a lot of embarrassment on what I was rooting for turtles. But it was a super LA day, and it had the outdoor with the cornhole and all of that. It was a really cool LA experience for the team, and even for me. I've never been to Brennan's. I never did the boat in the marina. I have had street tacos in LA. So even for me, 2/3 of it was new, but very LA.
And as a team building experience, people will never forget the turtle racing.
Oh, yeah.
That's one that they can talk about and laugh about for years
Forever.
to come.
Yeah, I think what was really cool for me with Bevz was obviously certain milestones. Eventually we want to go public or exit the company. But like I would argue having that team together in person, doing those moments, like hit a milestone for me with Bevz that made all the sacrifice, all the hustle worth it. Like I didn't know that moment would give me that visceral of like a reaction, but ending those days was like being able to fly someone from the Philippines that have never been to America and sort of have that whole day with the other half of the day was, or like the day before was all work related stuff.
Right,
so we still did the vision, the team building, the whatever. Like that was a really cool moment to go. We worked really hard to get here, right? Like a lot of hustle, a lot of sacrifice. And so to culminate once again, that in that moment was epic. We have a lot more to do now, but it was almost life-changing, right? For turtles, tacos, and a boat. Shouldn't be that life-changing. It was for me.
It was the miles you put into pounding the pavement to get there.
To get to the turtles.
To get to the turtles. Well, thanks again, Jason, for joining us. This is a lot of fun and really insightful history of how you got here, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is fun. We talked about cool stuff. I didn't get to talk about turtles with any other podcast I've been on, so win for me.
Win for turtles everywhere.
Yeah.
We've been speaking with Jason Vego. He's the CEO and co-founder of Bevz. And Jason, how can people find Bevz?
Bevz.com, Bevz.com. We are not super active on social. Where we are, it is for convenience store owners, so it might not be the best, but Bevz Tech on Instagram or LinkedIn is where I'm really posting the journey of Bevz. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn, Jason Vego, and you'll see what we're up to.
Or ask your local convenience store owner.
Yeah, we should be in there. And if they're not, then definitely add me on LinkedIn and let me know that they don't have Bevz, and then we'll give you commission.
Earning money on this podcast is great. Thank you to all our sponsors, in addition to Bevz, apparently. Nearshore, Unita, and ProdHub.ai. Build better products with ProdHub.ai, where innovation meets efficiency. Automate your PRDs, fast-track your story creation, and speed up your product team with a single platform. It's your co-pilot for product management. Discover how at ProdHub.ai. I'd like to thank you all again for listening to us. If you like what you hear, please smash that subscribe button. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Founders in LA.